Welcome back to Study Tips for IGCSE Biology. Today's topic is related to reproductions in humans. Without further delay, let's begin. In this chapter, we will find out about the structure and functions of the male and female reproductive organs, how and where fertilization takes place, how the structure of sperm and egg cells are adapted to their functions, implantation, the amnion and the placenta, the development and growth of an embryo and fetus, antenatal care and birth, advantages of breastfeeding or bottle feeding, the menstrual cycle, hormone control menstrual cycle, methods of birth control, how HIV and AIDS affect immune system as example of a sexually transmitted infection, and how HIV/AIDS can be transmitted. Human reproductive organ. Human, like all mammals, reproductive sexually. A new life begins when a male gametes fuses with a female one forming a zygote. The female reproductive organ. First, female gametes called eggs mate into ovaries. From ovaries are oviducts, fallopian tubes. Fallopian tubes do not connect directly to ovaries but have funnel shape. Two fallopian tubes lead to worms or uterus. Uterus wall have very thick wall made of muscle, quite small, only about the size of a clenched fist. But uterus can stretch a great deal when a woman is pregnant. At the base of uterus is a narrow opening guarded by muscle and the neck of the uterus or cervix. Vagina cervix leads. Cervix leads to vagina. Vagina opens to the outside. The opening from the bladder called urethra runs in front of vagina while the rectum is just behind it. Three tubes open quite separately to the outside. Egg productions. Eggs begin to be formed inside girl's ovaries before she is born. At birth, she will already have thousands of partly developed eggs inside her ovaries. When she reaches puberty, some of these eggs will begin to mature. Puberty is a time when the person approaches sexually matured. Maturity is called adolescence. Sperm productions begin in a boy and ovulations in a girl. During adolescence, the secondary sexual characteristics develop. In girl, pubic hair begins to grow, breasts develop, and pelvic girdle becomes broader. Meanwhile, in boys, growth of facial and pubic hair, breaking of voice, and muscle development. These changes are due to hormone estrogen in female and testosterone in male. The point at which sexual maturity is reached is called puberty. This is often several years earlier for girls than for boys. At puberty, a person is still not completely adult because emotional development is not complete. When an egg matures, an egg cell bursts out of the ovary into a funnel at the end of fallopian tubes. This is called ovulations. In humans, it happens once a month. You can see the human egg cells. It consists of several layers. The outer part layers is a layer of jelly, and the second part layer will be the cell surface membrane, and the inside part layers is a cytoplasm, which is containing yolk, and which is for energy store. And then at the middle of the nucleus, so it consists of nucleus which containing chromosome. So it is estimated about the size of the human cells is about 0.1 millimeter. The male reproductive organ. The male gametes called spermatozoa or sperm mate into testes. They are outside the body in two sets of the skin called scrotum. Sperm duct. The sperm duct are carried away from each testis in a tube called sperm duct. The sperm duct from the testes join up with the urethra just below bladder. Urethra. The urethra continues downward and opens the tips of the penis. Urethra carry both urine and sperm at different times. When sperm duct join the urethra, there is a gland called prostate gland. This makes a fluid which a sperm swim in. Sperm production contain thousands of very narrow coil tubes or tubules. This is where sperm are made. Sperm develop from cells in a wall of tubules which divide by meiosis. Sperms are made continually from puberty onward. Sperm production is very sensitive to the heat. If they get too hot, the cells in tubules will not develop into sperm. This is why testes are outside the body. If you can see this diagram, the structure of human sperm, we got a tail with flagellum, which produce swimming movement. And moving forward, you can see the middle piece containing mitochondria to release energy for swimming. And near to the head, and the center of the head will be the nucleus containing chromosome. And this is the head, the bigger part. So across a vesicle containing enzyme to dissolve away through the jelly surrounding the egg cells. Fertilization and development. After ovulation, the egg is caught in the funnel of the oviduct or fallopian tube. The funnel is lined with cilia which beat rhythmically, waffling the eggs into the entrance of the fallopian tube. Very slow, the egg travels towards uterus it along. Refer to diagram B. Cilia lining the fallopian tube helps to sweep it along. Refer to diagram A. Diagram A is actually to illustrate muscles in the wall of the fallopian tube, which helps to move it by peristalsis. If the egg is not fertilized by the sperm within 8 to 24 hours after ovulation, it will die. In order for fertilization to be successful, sperm must reach the egg near the top of oviduct. When a man is sexually excited, both is pumped into space inside penis that it becomes erect. To bring the sperm as close as possible to the egg, the man's penis is placed inside the vagina of the woman. This is called sexual intercourse. Sperm are pushed out of the penis into the vagina. When muscles in the wall of the tubes containing sperm contract rhythmically, the wave of contractions begin in testes, travel along the sperm ducts into penis. Fertilization and development. The sperm are squeezed along out of man's urethra and into woman's vagina. This is called ejaculations. The fluid containing sperm called semen. Ejaculation deposits the semen at the top of the vagina near the cervix. The sperms are still quite a long way from it. They swim using their tails up through cervix, through uterus and into oviduct, fallopian tube. Sperm can only swim at the rate of about 4 mm per minute, so it takes a while for them to get as far as the oviduct. Many will never get there at all. Once ejaculation deposits about 1,000,000 sperm in the vagina, so there is a chance that some of them will reach the egg. Once sperm enters the egg, refer to diagram B, only the head of the sperm goes in and tail left out. So the nucleus of the sperm fuses with the nucleus egg. This is called fertilization. The successful sperm enter the eggs and the eggs membrane become impenetrable. No other sperms can get in. The unsuccessful sperm will all die. When the sperm nucleus and the egg nucleus have fused together, they form a zygote. The zygote continues to move slowly down the oviduct and the zygote divided by mitosis. After several hours, it has formed a ball of 16 or 32 cells called embryo. The uterus has a thin spongy lining and the embryo sinks into it. This is called implantation. The embryo obtains food from the yolk of the egg. As the embryo grows, a placenta also grows, which connect it to the wall of the uterus. Refer to diagram F. The placenta is soft and dark red and has finger-like projections called villi. The villi fit closely into the uterus wall. The placenta is where substances are exchanged between the mother's blood and the embryo blood, so it is the embryo's life support system. After 11 weeks, the embryo has developed into a fetus. The placenta is joined to the fetus by the umbilical cord. Inside the cords are two arteries and a vein. The arteries take blood from the fetus into the placenta, whereas the vein return the blood to the fetus. Refer to diagram G. In the placenta are capillaries filled with the fetus blood. Refer to diagram G on the left-hand side. In the wall of the uterus are large spaces filled with the mother's blood. The fetus and mother's blood do not mix because they are separated by the wall of placenta, but they are brought very close together because the wall of the placenta is very thin. Oxygen and food materials in the mother's blood diffuse across the placenta into the fetus blood and are then carried along the umbilical cord to the fetus. Carbon dioxide and waste material diffuse the other way and are carried away in the mother's blood. By the time the baby is born, the placenta will be a flat disc about 12 cm in diameter and 3 cm thick. The fetus is surrounded by the strong membrane called the amnion. So this makes a liquid called amniotic fluid. This fluid helps to support the embryo and to protect it. Fertilization and development of the embryo and fetus. When it first sinks into the lining of the uterus, the tiny embryo is just a simple ball of cells. All of these cells look identical to each other at this stage. They continue to divide, moving into position to start to form the organs of the new individual. So the cell now begin to develop into different types, specialized for different functions. Some will become skin cells, some will be muscle cells, some will be blood cells, and so on. The little ball of cell gradually become more and more complex. By 6 weeks after fertilization, refer to diagram page, all the major organs are beginning to grow. By 8 weeks, the tiny embryo, still only about 1.5 cm long, has muscles and is starting to move. By 10 or 11 weeks, all of the organs are in place and the embryo is now called a fetus. From now on, the fetus grows steadily until about 38 weeks after fertilization, when it is ready to be born. Refer to the diagram below. Birth. A few weeks before birth, the fetus usually turns over in the uterus. It is lying head downward. You can see from this diagram. This is the vagina. And head lies just over the opening of the cervix. Birth begins when a strong muscle in the wall of the uterus starts to contract. This is called labor. To begin with, the contractions of the muscle slowly stretch the opening of the cervix. The amniotic sac usually breaks at this stage. After several hours, the cervix is wide enough for the head of the baby to pass through. Now the muscles start to push the baby down through the cervix and the vagina. Refer to diagram J. This part of the birth happens quite quickly. The baby is still attached to the uterus by the umbilical cord and the placenta. Now that it is the open air, the baby can breathe for itself, so the placenta is no longer needed. The placenta falls away from the wall of the uterus and passes out through the vagina, and it is called afterbirth. The umbilical cord is cut and clamped just above the point where is joined the baby. This is completely painless because there are no nerves in the cord. The stump of the cord forms the baby navel. What is antenatal care? The antenatal care is a step of healthcare, balanced diet, and performing light exercise in ensuring the mother is remain fit and healthy during pregnancy. The advantages breastfeeding and bottle feeding. Let's look under breastfeeding. What is the advantages? Breastfeed is that it contains antibodies from the mother which help the baby to fight off infection diseases. Breastfeed is free and clean. Breastfeeding also helps to close relationship to develop between the mother and the baby, which is beneficial to both of them. The composition of breast milk changes as the baby grows, so the nutrients contained are exactly right for the different stage of its development. Whereas, if you see on the bottles feeding, the advantages of the bottle feeding is less as compared to breastfeeding. This can make life easier for the mother because she can hand over the feeding of the baby to someone else. It can also help the father to bond with the baby if he helps to feed it. The menstrual cycle. Usually one egg is released into the oviduct every month in an adult woman. Before the egg cells is released, the lining of the uterus becomes thick and spongy to prepare itself for a fertilized egg cell. It is full of tiny blood vessels ready to supply the embryo with food and oxygen if it should arrive. If the egg cells is not fertilized, it is dead by the time it reaches the uterus. It does not sink into the spongy wall, but continue onward down through the vagina. As the spongy lining is not needed now, it gradually disintegrates. It is too slowly lost through the vagina. This is called menstruation or a period. So it is usually lasts for about 5 days. After menstruation, the lining of the uterus built up again so that it will be ready to receive the next egg if it's fertilized. Refer to diagram K, what's happening during the human menstrual cycle. In this diagram, he will explain the actual process, what is happening. So as a conclusion, a menstrual cycle starts with the first day of the period and ends with the start of the next period. An entire menstrual cycle usually lasts between 24 and 38 days, but the length may vary from cycle to cycle and may also change over the years. Hormonal control of the menstrual cycle. Estrogen is not the only female sex hormone. The ovaries also produce a hormone called progesterone during certain stage of the menstrual cycle and during pregnancy. The secretion of the hormone is controlled by two other hormones secreted by the pituitary gland in the head called LH and FSH. Whereas male mammal makes sperm all the time, female only produce egg at certain time. We have seen that in human, ovulation happens once a month. Ovulation is part of the menstrual cycle. First, a follicle develops inside an ovary. The development of the follicle is stimulated by FSH. The developing follicle secretes estrogen, and the concentrations of estrogen in the blood steadily increases. The estrogens make the lining of the uterus grow thick and spongy. Throughout this time, the pituitary gland secretes LH and FSH. These two hormones stimulate the follicle to keep on secreting estrogen. When the follicle is fully developed, there is a surge in the productions of LH. This causes ovulation to take place. The now empty follicle stops secreting estrogen. It becomes corpus luteum. The corpus luteum starts to secrete another hormone, progesterone. Level of FSH and LH fall. Progesterone keeps the uterus lining thick, spongy, and well supplied with blood in case the egg is fertilized. If it is not fertilized, then the corpus luteum gradually disappears. Progesterone is not secreted anymore, and so the lining of the uterus breaks down. Menstrual happens, a new follicle starts to develop in ovary, and the cycles begin again. But the egg is fertilized, the corpus luteum does not degenerate so quickly. It carries on secreting progesterone until the embryo sinks into the uterus wall and the placenta develops. Then the placenta secretes progesterone and carry on secreting it all through the pregnancy. The progesterone maintains the uterus lining so that menstruation does not happen during the pregnancy. Methods of birth control. We have several methods and it will show how it works, advantages and disadvantages. Condom. The condom is placed over the erect penis It traps semen and is released, stopping it from entering vagina. The advantages is a safe method of contraception if it is used correctly, but must ensure no semen is allowed to escape before putting on or after remove. It helps to prevent the transfer of infections such as HIV and etc. Diaphragms or cap. How it works is a circular sheet of rubber placed over the cervix and the top vagina. Spermicidal or sperm-killing cream first applied around its edge. Sperm deposited in the vagina cannot get past the diaphragms into uterus. So, this method is effective methods if it's used and fitted correctly, but fitting must be done by doctor. After that, the woman can put her own diaphragms in and take it out as needed. The pill or oral contraceptive. The pill contains female sex hormone, estrogen, and progesterone. One pill is taken every day. So, the pill the pill is effective method as long the pill are taken at the right time. Some women do experience unpleasant side effects, and it is important that women on the pill have regular checkup with doctors. Surgical or sterilization. In a man, the sperm duct are cut or tied, stopping sperm from traveling from testes to penis. In a woman, the oviduct are cut or tied, stopping egg from traveling down to oviducts. The advantages is surgical, extremely sure method of contraceptions with no side effect. However, the tubes often cannot be reopened if the person later decide they do want to have children, so it is not a method for young people. Spermicidal cream in the vagina kills sperm. This is considered a very easy to use, but it is only effective if it is used in combination with another method such as diaphragm. Natural. The woman keeps a careful record of her menstrual cycle over several months so that she can predict when an egg is likely to be present in her oviducts. She must avoid sexual intercourse for several days around this time. But this method is unsafe because it is never possible to be 100% certain when ovulation is going to happen. Nevertheless, it is used by many people who do not want to use other contraceptive methods. Let's look under how HIV/AIDS affect immune system as an example of a sexually transmitted infection. Sexually transmitted infections are caused by bacteria or virus that can be passed from one person to another during sexual intercourse. The disease AIDS or acquired immune deficiency syndrome is caused by HIV. HIV stands for human immunodeficiency virus. HIV infects lymphocytes and in particular a type called T cells. Over a long period of time, HIV slowly destroys T cells. Several years after infections with the virus, the number of certain kinds of T cells are so low that they are unable to fight against other pathogens effectively. Because HIV attacks the very cell which could normally kill viruses, the T cells, it is very difficult for someone's own immune system to protect them against HIV. About 10 years after initial infection with HIV, a person is likely to develop symptoms of AIDS unless they are given effective treatment. They become very vulnerable to other infections such as pneumonia. There may develop cancer because one function of the immune system is to destroy body cells, which may be beginning to produce cancer. Brain cells are also quite often damaged by HIV. A person with AIDS usually dies from a collection of several illnesses. There is still no cure for AIDS, though drugs can greatly increase the life expectancy of a person infected with HIV. Researchers are always trying to develop new drugs which will kill the virus without damaging the person's own cells. As yet, no vaccine has been produced either, despite large amount of money being spent on research. As a conclusion, HIV destroys T cells, which are critical to the human immune system. T4 cells are responsible for keeping people healthy and protecting them for common diseases and infections. As HIV gradually weakens, the body natural defense, sign and symptoms will occur. How AIDS or HIV can be transmitted? There are two ways. One is through sexual intercourse, and secondly is through blood contact. If through sexual intercourse, HIV can live in the fluid inside the vagina, rectum, and urethra. During sexual intercourse, fluid from one partner came into contact with fluid of the other. It is very easy for the virus to be passed on this way. The more sexual partners a person has, the higher chances of them becoming infected with HIV. In some part of the world where it is common practice for men to have many different sexual partners, extremely high percentage of people have developed AIDS. So the best way of avoiding AIDS is never to have more than one sexual partner. If everyone did that, then AIDS would immediately stop spreading. How AIDS HIV can be transmitted? Through blood contact. Many cases of AIDS has been caused by HIV being transmitted from one person's blood to another. In 1917 and 1980, when AIDS first appeared and before anyone knew what was causing it, blood containing HIV was used in transfusion. People being given the transfusion were affected with HIV and later developed AIDS. Now, all blood used in transmission in most countries is screened for HIV before it is used. Blood can also be transferred from one person to another if they share hypodermic needles. This most commonly happens in people who inject drugs such as heroin. Many drugs users have died from AIDS. People who have to deal with accidents such as police and paramedics must always be on their guard against HIV if there is blood around. They often wear protective clothing just in case a speeding accident victim is infected with HIV. In fact, there is far more danger to the person who have AIDS from such contact because they are so vulnerable to any bacterium or viruses which they might catch from you. With that, I would like to end my presentation. I hope you all enjoy reading and studying, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel because there will be a lot more videos coming. Thank you very much.